Hi guys and welcome back to Slice of Mike. Today we're talking about A Darker Shade of Magic by V.E. Schwab. Now you've probably already seen this little guy around YouTube and you may have already seen some reviews. But we're gonna do one today, so buckle in because I've got lots to say about it. If by some rare chance you haven't heard of this book already, I will start with a brief synopsis of the story. If you'd like to skip that part, you can click the link and it'll take you directly to the discussion. Go ahead, you can do it. It won't hurt my feelings or anything. So, A Darker Shade of Magic tells the story of Kel, who is the last in a magical race known as the Antari. The Antari are blood magicians who have the unique ability to travel between different worlds, or more importantly, different versions of the city we call London. Kel is from Red London, which is a city rich in magic and highly prosperous. Its neighbors are Grey London, which is a boring place similar to the real London with no magic at all, and White London, which is ruled by a pair of bloodthirsty twins who view magic as something to be controlled rather than the gift that it is. There's also a city called Black London, which long ago was destroyed by magic, and that led Red London to sever ties between the worlds and remove contact between them. So now, Kel is one of only two people who can travel between worlds, and that makes his job as emissary between Londons pretty important. However, Kel's a bit of a rascal and also has a side business as a smuggler. Now, as you would expect, that goes awry one day, and he finds himself in possession of a package that is perhaps a bit more dangerous than he thought it would be. As you can imagine, chaos ensues, and Kel finds himself in the center of this interdimensional conflict, and he also finds himself thrown together with a girl from Grey London known as Lila, who is a thief and quite accustomed to living dangerously herself. So let me just start the discussion by saying I'm sure you've read a lot of urban fantasies already, and you've probably read a lot of them set in London. I don't know if it's grittiness, or shadowy alleyways, or the natural association between royalty and magic, but there's just something that lends itself so well to these types of stories. So earlier this month I picked up another big February release, and that was Red Queen. I thought that book was okay, but it left me feeling underwhelmed and a bit disappointed by the hype machine. I just think there's a tendency for buzz to build up books to this point where we're expecting super awesome things, and then it doesn't deliver. But this book delivers. It delivers overnight express. Let's talk about world building. In an urban fantasy, world building is probably the most important thing, and the author has done such a good job in this book. So the majority of the story takes place between three different versions of London, and obviously, with three different versions of one city, you kind of run the risk of having those settings blurred together and not be distinct enough from each other. But here the author associates sounds and colors and smells and even textures like glass and metal and dirt, well that's not a texture, with different cities, and it's just such a good way of differentiating between them. A few of them even have their own language, and I love how the dialogue is peppered with foreign words that you never really find a translation for, but you really don't need it. It's just colorful. It adds flavor to the story. And let's talk about the characters. So Kel reminds me a lot of Howl from Howl's Moving Castle, and maybe you've seen that Miyazaki movie. There are even some parallels between them, like the fact that they are both magicians and they can move between or among worlds. So as an Antari, Kel has control over the elements, plus he has control over blood and bones. Gross. Then you have Lila, and let me just tell you how much I love Lila. She is the epitome of the plucky, sardonic, kind of tomboyish heroine that seems so prevalent in fantasies today, but she's also so much more than that. The author has done a really good job here of giving the characters clear motivations and desires, and overall, Lila just wants a place to belong. She feels like she doesn't fit in Grey London, she doesn't have any family, she doesn't really have a home, and that's initially what draws her to Kel. Kel doesn't feel like he belongs either. He's kind of a pet to the royalty in Red London, they're not really his family, so they both feel like outsiders, and I'm sure that's something a lot of people can relate to. To illustrate how awesome Lila is, there is a scene in the book where she's getting ready for a masquerade ball. She's picking out her costume, and the seamstress is like, "Oh, I have some really lovely dresses over here, why don't you try one on?" And Lila's like, "Oh, that's nice, but I see this pair of trousers and boots I like, so I'm just gonna take those." She kind of just does whatever she wants, and doesn't feel like she has to apologize or justify that, and that's awesome. So I'd imagine that in the second book we'll get a better look at some of the cities that are kind of glossed over and not really visited in this book. I'm also hoping that Kel will discover that there are other versions of London besides the one that he knows, like Green London where people live in trees or something. It's just an idea. Victoria, you can thank me later. I think this book would also lend itself really well to a film adaptation because there are lots of visual descriptions in the book, like White London, which is often described as this pallid place sucked of color, and Red London, which is described as a really vibrant place brimming with life and color. So I feel like that would be really cool to see on screen. Okay, so in summary, this book is pretty close to perfection. I haven't read as good of an urban fantasy since Neil Gaiman's Neverwhere. That gives you an idea of how good this book is. Everyone needs to read this book like today. Like yesterday. So that's all today. I hope everyone enjoyed this video, and if you are planning on reading this book, or if you're currently reading this book, tell me what your thoughts are in the comments below. And I will see everyone back here on Monday, so have a great weekend, and I will talk to you all later. Bye!